Hello students and welcome to Chemistry A. This is Ms. Slate and today we're talking about density. If we want to talk about density though, we have to talk about the two key properties of matter, mass and volume. Where mass is the amount of matter, we're thinking about like atoms or molecules in an object. Typically we use units of grams for mass, and it's going to be measured with a balance. Depending on the level of precision that we need for a particular task, we might use a triple beam balance, like the one pictured here, or we might use a digital balance. Volume, unlike mass, is just the amount of space an object takes up. So volume is usually going to be measured in units of milliliters or cubic centimeters. Those two units are equivalent. So what I mean by that is that 1 milliliter is equal to 1 cubic centimeter. So those units are equivalent and interchangeable. It just depends on how you're determining the volume of something. Typically, it's measured with a graduated cylinder, like this one pictured here, and what we used in the lab. It can also be measured with a pipette, which measures how much volume is dispensed. You can also calculate volume by measuring the sides of a regular solid and calculating it. When we talk about density, density is in fact the ratio of mass to volume for a particular substance. So if something has a lot of mass in a small amount of volume, it's said to be more dense. If you have a small amount of mass in a large amount of volume, then something is said to be less dense. And a substance's density is unique to it, so you can actually identify a substance based on what its density is. When we have to calculate density mathematically, you'll take mass and divide it by volume, which means the units for density are either grams per milliliter or grams per cubic centimeter, again, depending on what unit the volume was in. Now, because we're going to be doing some mathematical calculations, I want to introduce the problem-solving method that we're going to be using in this class. And it's defined by the acronym GUESS, where GUESS stands for given, unknown, equation, substitute, and solve. And so you're going to show these 5 things every single time you do a mathematical problem in this class. You're going to write down what the given information is. You're going to identify what they want you to solve for. You're going to write down the equation. You're going to substitute the given information into the equation, and then you're going to solve and box in your answer. So let's see what that looks like in an example. So here's an example of our density calculation. A piece of copper has a mass of 241.9 grams and a volume of 27.0 milliliters. What is the density of the copper? So first off, my given information. My given information is mass is 241.9 grams. Volume is 27.0 milliliters. My unknown. My unknown is density. That's what they want me to find. So I've got my given, my unknown. Now I need to list the equation. So this is where I'd put the equation for density. The next thing I need to do is I need to substitute my given numbers into the equation. So the next thing I'm going to show is mass and volume substituted into the density equation. Okay, so now we've gotten our given information, our unknown, our equation, our substitution, and now all that's left to do is solve. And we get 8.9592, and it goes on, right? But as we talked about with significant figures, we should always be rounding our calculations to the correct number of significant figures. So we did division in this problem. So in division, we should be rounding to the fewest total sig figs. Well, 241.9 has 4 significant figures. 27.0 has 3 significant figures. Zeros that come after the decimal point are significant. So 3 is our lowest, so we need to round our answer to 3 significant figures. So our final answer should be 8.96 grams per milliliter. Always need units. Let's look at another example. Lead has a density of 11.36 grams per milliliter. What is the volume of 65.3 grams of lead? Again, we need to remember to guess. Where our first G is writing down our givens. They told us the density of lead, 11.36 grams per milliliter. Always include units on everything at every step. Our other given was mass. They told us we've got 65.3 grams of lead. So density and mass were our givens. Next up is our unknown. Volume is what they want us to find. So we've got givens, we've got unknowns. Next is equation. Well, our density equation is mass divided by volume. Now, at this step, we can make 2 choices, right? We can immediately jump into substitute and solve, or we can rearrange our equation first to solve for our unknown. I like to rearrange the equation because I think it's a little neater, but either way should get you the correct answer. So if I was going to rearrange this equation to solve it for density, to solve it for volume rather, I'd multiply both sides by volume to get volume out of the denominator. And then we'd have volume times density equals mass. To get volume by itself, I'd divide both sides by density. And so we get for our equation, volume is equal to mass divided by density. Then I would move to my substitute step. So my mass now that we've got the information substituted in, the last thing to do is solve. Right, and we get a lot of digits out of that one. Once again, though, we're rounding to significant figures. We did division, so we're going to round to the fewest total sig figs. 11.36 has 4 significant figures. 65.3 has 3 significant figures. So we're going to round our final answer to 3 significant figures, which would give us 5.75 milliliters. Let's look at one last example together here, folks. Again, we need to remember to use our guess method. Given, unknown, equation, substitute, solve. That's how we solve all of our calculations here. So the question says, iron has a density of 7.87 grams per milliliter. What is the mass of 102 milliliters of iron? First, we start with the givens, right? They told us the density of iron, 7.87 grams per milliliter. They told us the volume of iron. They said 102 milliliters. So, givens are complete. Up next, unknown. Well, our unknown is mass. That's what they want us to find. Then our equation. Well, density equals mass divided by volume. Again, you could choose to first rearrange this to solve for mass, or we can go straight to the substitute step. I'll go straight to substitute this time, just so you can see both methods. So we're going to substitute in our givens, right? 7.87 grams per milliliter equal to mass divided by 102 milliliters. All right, so there's my substitution. Now I've got to solve. Well, I need to get m by itself. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 102 milliliters. And then that should give me my mass. But again, we have to think about sig figs in our final answer. We multiplied, so we're rounding to fewest total. Density 7.87 has 3 significant figures. Our volume of 102 also has 3 significant figures. So our answer should have 3 significant figures. Which gives us a final answer of 803 grams. And that wraps up our notes on density for today.